And ask the clerk to call the roll, please. And when you say if you're here or not, please let us know where you, if you're in the room, or if you're annex office, or if you're off campus.
Representative Blanton.
Present in the room.
Representative Bowling.
Here in the room.
Representative Bridges.
Here in the room.
Representative Birch. Representative Cantrell. Here in the room. Representative Dossett.
Here in the room.
Representative Dotson.
Here in the room.
Representative Duplessis.
On my way. I'll be there in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Representative Flannery.
Present in my annex office.
Thank you. Representative Fugate.
Here in the room.
Representative Johnson.
Here in the room.
Representative Kirk McCormick. Representative Marzian. Representative Miles.
Here in the room.
Representative Gibbons-Prunty.
On campus.
Thank you. Representative Scott.
Present.
Representative Stevenson. Representative Wesley.
In the room.
Representative White.
Present in the Capitol parking lot.
Thank you. And Chair Gooch.
Here. We do have a quorum, and we're authorized to do business. We want to welcome everyone to this first meeting of the 2022 regular session. I do want to recognize an intern that we have, Tanner Fisher, is right over here, and we're so glad to have you, and welcome back to the rest of our staff that has been around for a while, but certainly continue to do a great job for this committee, and we thank them. We couldn't do it without them. We have one bill on the agenda, and I'm ready to go with that, I think. It is House Bill 195, Representative Johnson. Please introduce yourself and your guest, and you can begin.
Thank you, Chairman Gooch. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm DJ Johnson, State Representative for the 13th District, City of Owensboro, and Davis County. And I would allow my guests to introduce themselves as well.
Good morning, everyone. Aaron Thompson with TC Energy, State Government and Community Relations Team.
Good morning, Bob Babbage, co-founder for TC Energy.
Okay, please everyone make sure that your mics are on, and sometimes you may have to actually get a little closer to them, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here today to present House Bill 195, which provides guidance for communications between property developers or property owners and interstate natural gas pipeline operators. I provided a preliminary presentation on this bill during the interim, so there will be some repetition, but I've added a little bit as well, so bear with me. Before we get into the specifics of the language, I'd like to provide just a little bit of background information. The Commonwealth of Kentucky has 6,532 miles of interstate natural gas transmission lines. To give you some idea of the extent of these natural gas pipelines, let's just look at a couple of slides real quick.
Could you give us that figure again?
Yeah, it's 6,532 miles. This is the overall Kentucky map. If you just look at the blue lines, that's the current pipeline network. And then if we're going to break it down to regions a little bit, here's central Kentucky, just to give you an idea of that area. And then eastern Kentucky. And then finally an area near and dear to my heart, the greater Owensboro area. Now, as you look at these maps, I'd like you to also remember that, just think about the citizens of Kentucky that live and work near these pipelines. So that's what this bill is about. Pipelines have historically been designed and intentionally placed away from large cities, but also close enough to these cities to provide the service they need to. As we see continuing growth and sprawl, as we see growing development in our state, we're seeing where these pipelines and the developments are starting to run together more and more often. Basically, pipeline operators, in addition to having to deal with the continuing development coming closer to the pipelines, they're required to meet stringent federal operation and maintenance standards. These standards change as the developments grow closer to the pipelines. Obviously, as Kentucky's population and commercial development increases, these conflicting interests are also going to increase. When implemented, this bill will drive private sector collaboration through the planning and zoning process. This will help ensure pipeline operators are in compliance with federal standards, but more important, it will maximize safety for our Kentucky citizens. So, before we get into the language, I'd like to just talk very briefly about how we got the language for this bill. In 2010, approximately 130 stakeholders representing pipelines and community planners from across the U.S. joined several federal government agencies, including the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, and also the Office of Pipeline Safety, to come up with the best practices related to community land use planning in and around pipelines. The procedures in House Bill 195 are based in large part upon the codifying of these best practices. In short, this is not language we came up with on our own. It's the result of a national collaborative effort. And if I can dive into the weeds just a little bit. So when a new development of any kind occurs near an interstate transmission pipeline, federal law governed under the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which I will attempt to call FISMA from here on out. I don't think that's exactly right, but it's close. There are 4 different classes that PHMSA regulates, and they range from Class 1, which is the lowest population density, to, you probably guessed it, Class 4, which is the highest population density. Now, the importance of these classes is it provides a rough approximation of a pipeline's potential risk to public safety. The class location assigned to a pipeline segment affects the applicable design, construction, testing, operation, and maintenance practices for that pipeline. And I want to be very clear about this. Pipeline operators have no choice in this matter, and they understand that. That being the case, House Bill 195 does not restrict development. What it does is provide guidance for both developers and property owners and the pipeline operators as to timing and procedures for talking to each other. Specifically, it will require developers to inform operators of the intent to develop near an existing pipeline earlier in the process, giving the operator time to coordinate with the developer. It also allows time for the operator to make any operation or maintenance modifications that are mandated by federal guidelines. And once again, it does increase safety for Kentucky citizens. What the bill actually does is this. It directs planning commissions to notify a natural gas transmission interstate pipeline operator of a planned development of any residential or commercial building within 1,000 feet of a transmission pipeline, and to do so at the time of submission of a development plan to a planning commission. It requires developers to provide on the final plat with the Regional Planning Commission a note that indicates that all reasonable means were used to obtain information about pipeline facilities and then review, or at least attempt to review, preliminary information about the proposed development with the pipeline operator. It instructs planning commissions to gather pipeline location information from the National Pipeline Mapping System within 60 days of the effective date of this legislation. It obligates pipeline operators to provide pipeline location information to developers upon notice of the preliminary development plan. It applies only to counties and municipalities that are governed by a regional planning commission for purposes of approving resident and non-residential developments. This currently applies to 57 of the 120 counties in Kentucky. And finally, it provides legal safeguards for planning and zoning commissions with respect to the data they provide to developers and operators. What this bill does not do, it does not allow new exemptions related to the Underground Facility Damage Prevention Act, Kentucky 811, and it does not give planning commissions the authority to restrict developments because of pipeline locations. And then one final point, in October we invited the liquid petroleum industry to be included in this bill. We recently heard from them that they are interested in doing so, so we will probably have a floor amendment to bring the liquid petroleum industry into this bill. Frankly, if we don't do this now, we're just going to have to do it again for them later down the road. So we're trying to be as efficient as possible.
Motion on the bill.
Okay, we have a motion on the bill and a second. Thank you. I'm going to allow, since this is the only bill we have, I want to offer some other folks a chance to say something. And, Representative Scott has a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, Chairman, did you want us to wait until everyone else presents?
It's up to you. If you don't ask now, go ahead. Or...
I can wait.
Okay, thank you. I think is Tom Fitzgerald on Zoom too. I think he has some comments. Tom, are you there?
Mr. Chairman, I am, and I appreciate the opportunity. It's good to be back in front of the committee. Sometimes the best testimony is the testimony that one doesn't give, and so unless there are questions, I think that the sponsor has more than adequately described the effect of the bill. Everyone has an interest in reducing the likelihood of accidental damage to gas pipelines from development, and this does nothing more than to take that concept of a consultation zone that was created by this collaborative process and put it into Kentucky law. So while there may be some tweaks to it as it progresses through the process, the concept is a sound concept and is fully consistent with what the PHMSA, the Department of Transportation, and the industry and citizens have recognized as best practices in terms of requiring that consultation between developers and pipeline operators in order to protect the pipelines from third-party encroachment and also to assure that development incorporates those design features that would minimize public safety or environmental risks. For example, not citing hard to evacuate buildings within the consultation zone, that sort of thing. So, we all encourage local governments to use the powers that the General Assembly has given them to address these sorts of local issues. And this does nothing but direct those local planning commissions to consider this very important public safety and a pipeline safety issue. So I appreciate that. Appreciate the sponsor bringing the bill forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom, and appreciate your comments on the bill. Is this bill on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the least likely and 10 being the most likely, would if this bill passes, would it encourage you to shine your shoes?
Mr. Chairman, we'll have to tell that story for the newer members of the committee, but this is definitely on the upper end of the spectrum.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
And of course, that, Mr. Chairman, is nothing of value. So there's no risk there that I'm violating the, because those shoes are nothing of value either, for that matter.
Okay, thank you. Anyone? Bob, you want to?
Yes. Got anything?
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob. Well, I'll just mention briefly, I have some prepared testimony, but really just to sum it up how I would phrase it from a pipeline operator's perspective, this tool really allows us to have this critical communication whenever there's a new development that occurs. We're already getting informed if there's a easement or a right-of-way along our existing pipelines, but if it's within the 660 feet corridor adjacent to our pipelines, we're currently not notified about that. And so this communication tool really allows us to be notified early in the process when there's a new development occurring, and then from there, work with the person developing the property. So it's something we're very interested in. We operate in about 45 of the 120 counties. We represent approximately 25% of the total natural gas transmission pipelines in the state. So really supportive of the bill and appreciate the opportunity for TC Energy to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are very grateful for the sponsors' work on this and the input of other industries related. It's been several months in the making after being introduced for conversational purposes last year. It's a great step to take, a very good step to take, and we thank the committee for its interest and yours personally as well.
Okay, thank you. Representative Scott, you have a question?
Thank you so much, Chairman. Representative Johnson, my question relates to Section 1, Section 1C, where a person is defined to include corporation and association. With this bill, are we defining a person as an entity? I just need to get some clarity on that definition.
I think with I'm not a lawyer, so I have to caveat that. But what we're trying to do is identify anyone who might be a property owner or a developer within the area of the segment of the pipeline. So an individual would be considered an entity at that time, for the purposes of this bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Representative Prunty, I think, has a question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, Representative Johnson,
why just 50 counties, 50, I forget the number, 50 something counties of 120.
Right.
Why would this just be effective in that number? Is it not needed in the other counties, or?
It is needed in the other counties. The reason there's 57 counties is because currently that's the number of counties that actually have an official planning or zoning commission. And we are working on steps to include the remainder of the counties of the state. But the operational aspect of this bill is that we want to go through planning and zoning so we have a local entity that's paying attention and understands what's going on and can coordinate between the pipeline operators and developers. So there are some areas that just don't have those commissions, and I would turn that over to Mr. Babbage, I think, but we are working on a process to include all of the counties in the state. Do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Yeah, and I might actually answer that if that's okay. You know, there's generally a large correlation, you know, with development occurring in a community where there's already a planning commission. So that's more likely where there's actually going to be a circumstance where this could be happening, because if the community's developing, they likely already have the planning commission in place to be able to plan for the future. So there's a good correlation for where we see the potential for this to have issues in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? We have a motion and a second on the bill. Ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Representative Blanton,
Aye.
Representative Bowling,
Yes.
Representative Bridges,
Yes.
Representative Birch, Representative Cantrell, Representative Dossett,
Yes.
Representative Dotson,
Yes.
Representative Duplessis,
Yes.
Representative Flannery,
Yes.
Representative Fugate,
Yes.
Representative Johnson,
Yes. Sorry.
Representative Kirk McCormick, Representative Marzian, Representative Miles,
Yes.
Representative Gibbons Prunty,
Yes.
Representative Scott,
No.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Wesley,
Yes.
Representative White,
Yes.
Chair Gooch.
Yes. And the bill does pass with favorable expression. The same should pass. Let me just clarify. Of course, I was joking earlier with my friend Tom Fitzgerald, and I probably chaired this committee for around 23 years or so. I've actually lost track. And for many years there, he had a pair of shoes that he wore, and he said he wasn't going to shine those shoes or polish those shoes until some good environmental legislation was passed. So we've had a lot of fun with that over the years, and I look forward to working with him again this year. So with that, committee members, that's all the business that we have today. We may or may not meet next week. It depends on the bills that are. I do have a doctor's appointment in Georgetown that morning. We may have time to meet, but I will let you know. So thank